All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Real Live Talk. I'm really pumped that you're here to check out this episode. If this conversation today blesses you, encourages you, challenges you in some way, if you consider subscribing, sharing, leaving a review, depending on which kind of platform you're watching this on, that would really, really mean the world to me. So thank you so much. I'm really excited to have this particular conversation today. My guest is Jon Rizzo. Jon is an actor, musician, singer, and songwriter. You can see Jon in Firelight Creative's filmed production of From Patmos, which premieres worldwide and can be seen both in person and online on March 18th. So Jon will be up on the screen with me in just a minute, but just before we jump into it, well, actually, before I say that, you're going to want to make sure that you stay tuned because a little bit later on in the show, we're going to tell you about how you can get access to the filmed production of From Patmos for 15% off. So I think that's pretty cool. So stick around for that. Just before I bring Jon up on the screen, we're going to go ahead and check out a quick trailer here of From Patmos, and then we'll kick everything off. All right, Jon, first of all, can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. Well, thank you, man. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Man, we worked through a few technical difficulties there, but I super appreciate your time. And thanks, man. I've been wanting to do this for a while. We connected a little while back. Well, you and I, first of all, we go sort of way back.
Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah,
Circa 2005.
yeah, man. Yeah, just a couple of decades ago, right? But yeah, my last year of no, excuse me, my first year of Bible college coincided with your last year at Elam, and so I knew of you. I've been familiar with your music and some other things about you for a long time, but this is definitely the longest conversation we've ever had. And so, anyway, I'm super pumped, man, just to find out about what you're doing and just get to know you a little bit better. So, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. So I want to. We just looked at that little trailer of From Patmos. We've actually got a couple other clips that I want to show just throughout, and I want to talk a good amount about that. Just before we jump into it, has music and artistic expression for you always been a part of your life? Was that something that you were kind of into as a kid, or something that kind of came along later in life? How did all that kind of start and take shape for you?
Yeah, I would say it's always been a part of who I am. I mean, I remember scribbling little pieces of poetry on paper, pre the smartphone electronic device age. When I as early as I can remember, as far as being able to write, and of course, being in ministry, doing worship leading, there's a certain amount of creativity that comes with that. So that's been kind of the majority of that creative expression until the last several years.
Mm. And over the last several years, what has so I so you got into you did this production of From Patmos, but you've been involved in
Mhm.
some other things, right? Before this, you've done some other plays and some theater work and things like that.
Yeah. So, gosh, this had to have been oh probably 2012. I
Mm.
My brother, actually the writers of From Patmos. This was their first show, so and it wasn't filmed. And so I was in that in 2012 on
Oh,
a
okay.
whim. I went to callbacks. I had just gotten back in the country, and my brother's like, "You should come to callbacks. We need more guys." And I went. Ended up getting cast as kind of like this secondary villain character, and was surprised by how much I fell in love with acting and with theater. And so that's
Mm.
when it all began. I think I was around, gosh, 28 or 29 at the time.
Wow. So 2012, you joined up with, the ensemble for From Patmos, but you said you were a secondary villain character? So you had sort of
Yeah,
a small role in the show?
I did, yeah, and that was really my first. I mean, aside from a few things here and there growing up, that was my first taste of theater and of acting, and, I got bit with the bug really bad,
Mm,
and from there, you know, I didn't really do my I should not really, I didn't do my first community theater show until 2016, so everything before that was church related, and it was a very small period of time. But yeah,
what kinda church did you grow up in?
so I grew up. My dad actually graduated from Elam Bible Institute, where we both went. So
Okay.
we kind of have a very my background was kind of influenced by Elam even before I attended Elam. So it was an Elam. He was an Elam pastor.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
guys were kind of on, like, the Pentecostal end of the spectrum growing up, I would
Yeah.
imagine?
Yep.
Did you
For
guys
sure.
do so did you have, like, the Easter pageants and, like, all that kinda stuff going on in your church? Like, what kind of, church-related production or, acting, play, that kinda thing did you ever have a chance to be a part of?
I was in this really short play when I was a teenager at a different church in the city I grew up in. It wasn't with my dad's church, but other than that, I mean, I really didn't get into any church related stuff until my late 20s. That first show I did that my brother wrote. Mm,
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So From Patmos existed, first of all, as a play, right? Like as a production inside a theater. But
Yes,
now, what you guys just got done wrapping up, and we're just very, very close, just about a week away from the this worldwide premiere of From Patmos in terms of the film. So this is a filmed version now, correct?
correct. Yeah, the gosh, it was probably 12 years ago that it was first on stage, and they rewrote the script. It went through several rewrites. My brother added some additional songs, and then we filmed uh, October of last year, and it's just been in post production since then, getting those final edits, color corrections, sound editing, all that fun stuff. And the international premiere will be on the 18th of this month, and really anybody from anywhere in the world can watch that. Can They can rent it for 24 hours, and then we're also going to have a local film premiere in Olathe, Kansas, at Life Mission Church.
That's so cool. Um, So, real quick, let's do this now. We'll do it again at the end, but just so that we don't forget, or anybody that's on now that might not be able to stay to the end, would you just
Mm.
quickly tell us where we can, go to find out information about ticketing, whether it's in person or online? Just mention the website and anything else that's relevant for people to know about.
Yeah, absolutely. So tickets for both the in-person show and online can be found at frompatmos.com. And for your listeners slash viewers, there's a discount code Patmos15, and that gets you
Awesome.
15% off.
Awesome. Patmos 15. At some point, I'll try to put that up on the screen so everybody can see it. For those that are watching, I know probably more people are listening than watching at this point, but but for those that are watching, we'll get that up on the screen. Either way, we'll include it in the show notes and all that stuff for the podcast, and that'll be cool. So when you were recording the now for this filmed version, were you recording in front of an audience, or were you just recording for the sake of getting it on video?
Most of it was strictly for getting it on video. We did do one in-person performance. But because we were filming it, every scene, like if there was a prop in one place on a table, it had to be there at the exact same
Okay.
spot for the next take. So the live audience was, it was a long process for them, because doing going through the entire show, it just took us a while to reset and make sure that everything was the same consistency.
That's awesome, and I could just I imagine, I know it takes so many people working together to bring something like this to life. I mean, we're talking about, from what I read, this is a 2.5 hour long film, right?
Yeah.
So how
Yep, that's
many
right.
people, if you know, or ballpark even, how many people kind of work together? What all went into the production? How many people had to be involved in this project?
I don't have a hard number off the top of
Yeah.
my head, but I mean, easily 30 to 40, I would imagine, because we had a pretty large cast, and then we had director, producer, we had a professional film crew, we had a sound engineer, we had people backstage helping with props and scene changes. So it's a pretty large team effort, and it was really
Mm,
cool to see how all the pieces came together, and each individual contributor played such a pivotal role. Not just the people that were in front of the camera, but working behind the scenes to make sure everything worked well and went off without any incident.
that's so awesome. Well, what I want to do, let's go ahead and show a clip, and then I'll ask you a couple more questions.
Sounds
I never knew that this Jesus had such great love for me. I never knew the way he felt about sinners like me. I never knew that there was mercy to be lavished upon me. He's made me new. He's forgiven. He's forgiven. He has taken. He has taken all of my hate.
So, what's going on in this clip? I feel like this might be a clip that can explain a little bit about what the overall production is all about in the first place. So, what's going on in that clip that we just saw there?
So in the clip that we just saw, you see two different ages of John. So you see old John, that was the guy with the longer hair. And then you see younger John or middle-aged John, played by myself. And in this moment, John the Apostle, this is kind of his turning point in the story, where he goes from being a son of thunder to, kind of this evolution into being the apostle of love. And so this is a moment where he's really been confronted with some darkness in his own life, and he's been confronted with some areas where he's been in disagreement with Jesus and who Jesus is, but he wasn't even aware of it. So it's this kind of this revelatory turning point moment for John, um, and that's kind of what's the culmination of this song is about.
Mm. So, is the production, is it pretty much like John, because the show is called From Patmos. So, John the Apostle, as he's in his old age and he's been exiled to the Isle of Patmos, right? Oh, did I lose you? Or check to see if you're muted real quick. I lost audio. You can hear me or no? We can't hear. Nobody can hear. Okay. Let me see if I can hear myself on the line. Give me a second here.
Can you hear me?
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we're
That
back.
that was weird. That was weird. Sorry, everybody. Um, sorry about that. I don't know what just happened, man.
I'm sure your question.
We Yeah, so I definitely was in the middle of a question there, but yeah, so maybe just from your perspective, this, I'm sure this would come off better. So, what is the just overall, what is the story about, and yeah, what are people gonna get when they either come see or watch online from Patmos?
The story is told by John the Apostle from the island of Patmos, where he's a prisoner,
Mhm.
and he is talking to a Roman guard and reflecting back on his life. And so it really goes from his childhood all the way up to the point where he is imprisoned. And really, I think one of the main takeaways from this show, a lot of times we think about these Bible characters, these these huge figures that we often put on a pedestal when we read the scriptures as untouchable, as perfect, and something that we could never achieve to. But what I realized as I was playing this character is you got to start somewhere, and
Mm,
you go from this really he's a hothead, talks about James and John being sons of thunder. There's this account in the Gospels where their mother comes to Jesus and says, "Hey, can my boys sit your right hand, your left in your
mhm.
kingdom?" And there's these hints and these indicators that we see about John's character and who he was as a person. And I think that really a fictionalized retelling of that, and um, we always want to make sure we're staying within the grounds or the parameters of orthodoxy, but we also want to have originality and creativity when we're telling these stories. And so that was a really fun thing to explore in the character of John.
That's so cool. One of my favorites is, I think it's in John chapter 20 where it says, like, John and Peter, well, John's the one writing, so he doesn't call himself John. He says the other disciple. He says, "The other disciple and Peter were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter." He just had to he just had to put that in there. He's like, "I
Oh
run
yeah.
faster than Peter." It's so
Hmm.
funny. Well, you mentioned him, being well, basically the role that you're playing of John is him as he's a middle-aged man, and I'm not putting you quite there yet. I don't think you're quite middle-aged yet, but you and I together, we're not getting too far away. We're pretty close. Was there anything about that of getting into that role? I know that as an actor, you're getting into the role and into the mindset of the character. Of course, based on what you know about him, but also kind of from your own perspective and your own sort of creative, twist on things, and just kind of getting into the mindset of the character as you're playing that role. Was there anything that kind of resonated with you on that level of, I might this in terms of playing the role of the character at an age that might be similar to the age that you are right now? And was there anything that just kind of caused you to particularly resonate with John as you were portraying him?
It's a great question. I think that, um, man, I think that there's a lot in our telling of John. There's a lot of unfulfilled expectations, and
Mm,
things not going according to his plan at all. And I think I can definitely resonate with that in my own personal life, and
yeah.
seeing the kind of the frustrations of that. But learning to trust Jesus's leadership, you know, for him as a man in front of him, and then as he is, Jesus ascends to heaven, continues to have that relationship, and ultimately culminates in him receiving the revelation of Jesus Christ that we have written in the book of Revelation.
Mm,
So kind of seeing that journey of struggle, wrestling with disappointment, wrestling with my dreams not coming true, to be cliche or use a trope, that he ultimately learned to trust. And because of that faithfulness, he gets this amazing revelation.
mm. Yeah, that's awesome. I just there's something that's so powerful about watching a play or a musical production. um and I would just imagine that, kind of being able to get into the role of such a big, important biblical character and figure, and you're surrounded by all these people, right, that are all acting and getting into these roles, and you're essentially acting out this gospel story. You're essentially and telling the gospel, really the story of the gospel, presenting the story of the gospel in such a unique way of, a man who's been exiled on an island as a prisoner in his 90s, and kind of looking back on his life and his experiences with Jesus and all these different things. It's such a very unique way of being able to tell that story. But I just think that I would just imagine that it must have been such a unique experience to kind of get into the role and the mindset as you're telling the story, with this group of people as you're singing together and you're,
Mhm.
essentially walking through the story. Did it cause the gospel message to kind of come alive to you in a way that, you probably I don't I I don't think you could have experienced it any other way. I just think that that must be such a special experience to because you're kind of like living in the story as you're telling it and experiencing Jesus, and experiencing the power of the gospel message, but on a whole new level where you're actually living in it and getting into the mindset of the character. Um, what do you get what I'm saying there? Is that something
I
that you
do.
felt? Was that something that was made had an
Yeah,
impact on your life?
it did. It did because, the whole idea of acting is living truthfully in imaginary circumstances. And what made this show unique is that, especially in the scene we saw a clip of earlier, I had to go. I didn't have to, but I chose to, and I think it hopefully it makes the scene more powerful. I went to a place in my own life, in my own heart, where I'm saying, yeah, from a spiritual aspect, there's there's parts of me that I don't want anybody else to see, and there's wrong mindsets that I have that I need to confront when God highlights them. And
Mm,
so for me, I'm like, well, okay, in John's instance in this story, that confrontation happens with a Samaritan woman. So, there's this account of Jesus speaking with a Samaritan woman, and we're reimagining or imagining what was the conversation like after that
mm.
encounter that Jesus had. And so in this, without giving too many spoilers away, John is not happy, and there's really it's uncovering, and I think that hopefully it does this for the audience, for those who watch this, uncovering the dormant or maybe camouflaged racism, or
Come on.
God's no respecter of persons, and that, there's aspects of the way that we view others that is not, it's not God's heart. It's not who we're meant to be as human beings, as we look at one another, no matter how we're different, color of our skin, or belief system, convictions, religion, um, all of the isms, that
Yeah.
can divide us. And so for me, I'm like, okay, where are the parts in my life where I am, um, I have some wrong mindsets about certain things. And so in this scene, I really allow myself to go to that place
Wow.
and to live that. Um, so yeah, it was very unique because, again, going back to the original statement about acting, it's like living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. Well, in this
Hmm.
case, um, there's something called the Meisner technique, and so I would joke with the director with acting, and I would joke with the director, it's like spiritual Meisner, because I'm literally going to a place spiritually for this scene, um, to read as true and to find the character's motivation and reality in this moment.
Do you think there's a way to apply that to our lives in terms of the way that we engage with scripture, like to the way that we engage with studying God's word and reading the Bible, to where like I know that sometimes we could probably get into a mode of life or a mindset where we're just kind of reading to read, and where we don't really necessarily engage with what's going on in terms of, I mean, I think that it can kind of go over our heads sometimes. Like, these were real people in real
Mhm.
circumstances, like you were just talking about that aspect there of, there being this racist or prejudicial sort of, mindset toward people, toward the Samaritans, from the perspective of the Jews toward the Samaritans. And there was all that going on. And I think kind of being able, even as we're reading God's word and studying and spending time with the Lord, to kind of be able to put ourselves in the shoes of people, um, uh, and I think that that could cause it to really come alive to us more and cause us to kind of go to another level. Do you think that there's something practical there that we could somehow kind of take that same mindset and apply it even to our own, just time of study and walk with the Lord?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that comes from just, you know, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there's a specific kind of Bible study where you'll take out the verses and you'll just go through a passage and you'll write down your thoughts. You'll talk
Mm.
about the themes, and I've done that with small groups before, and that's been really amazing just to see kind of the hidden truths in a passage, and on a more, you know, practical, more intellectual level. I think about Moses, for example. Like, Moses needed Aaron to speak for him. So did he have a speech impediment? Did he have an anxiety disorder? Like, what was it that prevented Moses from feeling like he, you know, was able to speak to Pharaoh and to lead a people? And so it's stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like, where was the, on a psychological level, on an emotional level, what was preventing it? So
Hmm. Yeah, the nuances of the story really matter, and the context, the context and the culture, all these things help us to really experience what was actually going on. There's times we can read a passage of scripture and we're reading it in English or, whatever our native language is, and the words don't necessarily even have they've done, a great job translating everything, but the words don't always have the exact same meaning, because sometimes there's a word in Greek that we don't even have in our language a direct translation for, and then to another extent, we don't understand the culture of what it was like, and the culture and the context of why Paul said those things, or why Jesus said those things, or why John said those things, and so we can kind of miss out on some of that. But yeah, I think that that's so cool, man. I think that that's such a cool, like, unique experience that you've had in being able to be a part of this production, and kind of like living in the reality, and of course you're taking some creative liberties and going to some places, and like, oh, I just imagine that maybe it was like this, and kind of getting into that mindset, right? But I just think that that's such a cool, unique experience, and yeah, I think that for sure, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that there's ways that we could apply that same kind of thinking into our walk with the Lord, so that as we're reading scripture, it's not just words on a page, but it's recognizing, maybe even identifying. I think that's probably a better way to say it, identifying with the characters in the story in a way that really makes it come alive to us. So I think that's
yeah,
super cool.
sure. I
Um,
think another example would be, oh, sorry.
no, please go ahead.
I was just thinking of another example. You know, we often just kind of gloss over the readings of Paul when he's like, I was beaten with rods. You know,
Mm,
we talk, I was, you know, scourged. And he talks about we kind of like just read over this and gloss over it and don't really think about it. But a lot of times when you think about in modernity and present day, there are Christians who are being persecuted for their faith. And so when you
wow.
hear those accounts, when you hear those stories from today, it makes what happened 2,000 years ago a lot more relevant and real.
Mm,
That's a kind of another parallel that maybe could be drawn.
yeah, absolutely. How do you personally get into the role that you're portraying, or get into the mindset of the character? Is there anything that you kind of do, that you focus on to make that character come alive for you, and to kind of get into the mindset of the character that you're portraying?
Yeah, I think the biggest clue that you have when portraying a character is the text. So what does that character say? And so once I actually get my lines down, layer that I add is, what is my character thinking in this moment? Or what is my character thinking when my scene partner, the other character, is speaking to my character in this scene?
Yeah.
Um, and then kind of understanding overarching, what's the character arc happening in this specific stage of the story, which can be tricky when you're not filming something in chronological order.
Mm. Cool. This is kind of a nerdy question, but just something that I'm curious about. The extent of my involvement in plays. I was in a lot of plays as a kid, but I would always have like one or two lines. So the whole time, I'm just thinking about when my line is coming up, and I kind of know
Hmm.
what the cue is that when I'm supposed to say it. But when you're doing a production that's as lengthy as this and you're one of the lead roles and all of that, are you just I'm just curious about what your mindset is. Are you thinking about when you have to speak again, or do you know it so well that you're just kind of living in the moment and it's more like second nature than having to actually think about, like, oh, when is my next line and what does it happen? When is my cue? I'm just curious about kind of how that feels for you once you're actually in the production itself.
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. It's second nature and kind of living in the moment. There is an importance of not being so overwhelmed and in the moment that you kind of lose your line. You have to be
Sure.
careful of that. But no, it's definitely more of like, hey, I've got my lines down. In this next scene that I'm about to do, what is my character experiencing, and why is he saying what he's about to say? What's his motivation? Uh, my my playwriting professor at university, um, he would ask this question. He asked this question first couple days of class. He's like, "Okay, what's the purpose of dialogue?" And we're like, "Oh, to move the story along. Oh, to build the plot." The
Yeah.
purpose of dialogue is for one character is for a character to get something else from the other character. It's about getting what you want.
Mm.
And so as a writer, you know, understanding that, and also as an actor, like, well, yeah, that's actually true. Like every conversation is really based on meeting a need, and there's obviously there's exceptions, but for the most part, dialogue is about that. It's about getting what you want.
Yeah. Oh, that's a cool perspective.
Mm.
Is it cool if we show one more clip here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to show this one because I really love the vocals in this particular clip. So we'll show this one and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
I came, I gave, I left, then I set sail again. Blind eyes would open, deaf ears would hear of the mercy that Jesus has. I came, I gave, I left, then I set sail again. To live here is Christ, but to die is gain. What shall I do? I will remain. I will remain.
And for anybody listening and not watching, that's you
Mhm.
singing there. And I just think that those are really really powerful vocals. I love that. I love that clip, man. I can't wait to see it for real. I can't wait to watch it. So, but what's going on in that clip that we just watched or listened to?
So that is in the latter part of the show, and at that point, John is kind of taking account on all of these lost and all
Mhm.
that the gospel has cost him, and being true to the calling has cost his character. And so in this moment, I think it's kind of a re-sign up point
Mm.
in his story, and it's kind of he's recounting his past, and he's looking forward to the future as well. And that that final lyric, "I will remain," like he's we're borrowing some language from Paul, to live as Christ, to die as gain, but it's more profitable for you that I remain, like that Paul is speaking to the church. And
Yeah.
so we took that language, and we put it in the mouth of John, because he also was a leader in the church.
Mm. What would you say for you is a takeaway that people can expect, or This is a better way to ask this. What's sort of your heart, I guess, in being a part of this production, and what you would expect somebody to maybe walk away from seeing this production with, and sort of your heart for what you want people to experience.
My hope is that people experience this story on another level, or they see another layer
Yeah.
in the life of the Apostle John, and they see the humanity, but also the power of the gospel in his life.
Mm, that's so good. Yeah, it's really cool when we get to see that. Like, I don't know, have you seen the Chosen series, the YouTube series? When we kind of get these opportunities to experience characters again, not just in like people that were in a book a long time. I think even just seeing a trailer or seeing a clip and knowing like, oh, that's John. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's John, or that's Jesus, or like these were real people that lived and walked on the earth. And I really do think, even just from the very limited knowledge and information that I have of this so far, it really just seems to me like something that's going to just really be powerful, and do just that for people that get a chance to see it. One more
Yeah,
time, John, and then I've got maybe just one or two more questions as we kind of start to wind things down here. But one more time, if you would just point some people to where they could go to purchase tickets and to find out more about the production from Patmos.
yeah. So it's going to be from Patmos, dot, and that is also where you can, or you can online, so you can be able to rent it for hours on the 18th, available worldwide. And for your watchers, we do have a code, 15, that gets you 15%.
All right. I don't know
Well,
how this sounds to you. I'm here. I'm breaking up. Am I breaking up on your end?
I got what
You
you're
can hear
saying.
me okay? Let me
Mhm.
just take a quick pause here. Hopefully everything comes back to normal in a second here. Um, yeah, I don't know. Internet's a little bit wonky today. That's frustrating, but hopefully we can get through this. John, I wanted to ask you too. In the production here, did you have any? Because I know that this was something that your brother Justin wrote, as far as the musical production and all of that, as you
Mhm.
said, a number of years ago. Um, and then some things were kind of revamped, some things were added as you guys got ready to go into the film production. Did you have any input in terms of the songs, like the songwriting and things like that?
No, not I will for next that we do, which will we're going to be filming August of this year, and probably around.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I wanted to ask you because I came across I went into the weeds a little bit as I was getting ready for this conversation, and I came across some music that you wrote. Looks like it a while back. I think I saw 2013, 14, something like that.
Mhm.
Do you still write music? Is that something that you've still been into in recent history, or something that you're interested in, getting back into again, or what's that been like for you?
Yeah, I do. In fact, for the upcoming show, it's called Between Two Worlds, and that's based on
Okay.
the life of Daniel. I wrote several songs for this show and was also a contributor on the book for the script. And
Awesome.
so it's something that I've continued to do throughout the years. But being a part of being a co-writer on a show has really made me hone in on that and get those juices flowing again. So that's been a lot of fun, and I think it's been really great, just to get going with the songwriting again. So that's definitely something that I want to continue to do and get better at.
If I made you repeat yourself just now by asking that question, I apologize. It was breaking up a little bit, and I caught most of it, but I may have missed something. So if I had you repeat yourself, I sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
But, but I came across an album called "The Way You Are."
Yes.
That's available on Spotify. And bro, like I'm I'm really not even joking or just saying that I love it, man. I really love it. I wish I had found it sooner. I was listening to a handful of songs that you have up there, and it's just the music is so fun. It's really fun. It's just enjoyable to listen to. It's kind of got this whimsical sort of element to it. There's parts of it that I was listening to where it kind of took me back and made me think that I was watching some kind of a musical from, the past, but then there was other stuff that kinda had this sort of, like, Panic at the Disco vibe to it and just some different things, and, man, I really enjoyed it, so I super recommend it. The album is called "The Way You Are" by Jon Rizzo. It's available on Spotify. Is there, anything else or anywhere else that you would, point people to check out any of your, music or even other, content or things that you've worked on?
I mean, that same EP is also available on Apple Music and I think Amazon Music as well. Probably any streaming platform. I haven't really released anything since then, so I'm excited about the cast album for this upcoming show because I'll actually have some. Even though I'm probably not going to be the one singing it, I'll have some new music out that I've authored. But I appreciate the kind words. That's definitely that seems like such a long time ago because it was, and 9 years ago. Gosh, but yeah, it's funny. I've taken I've taken about 6 years of voice lessons since then, so it's I'll listen to that and I'll kind of cringe a little bit because my technique has improved so much. But
That always
it's
happens.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
that always
probably I mean
happens.
you probably have experienced that with like you preach. I'm assuming so. You listen
Everything.
to old messages, you're like man, much.
Yep. Yeah, it's so funny going back and listening to old, yeah, recordings of messages and things like that. I'm like, "Ugh, did I really say that?" But yeah, it's interesting, man. Well, yeah, I maybe final question here because I know we've got to wrap this up. Can you is there anyone that you could point to in your life, as far as your singing slash songwriting that has, just really been an influence on you, either on your musical style, or on the way that you write and things like that? Is there any particular influences that you have that you know about? Sometimes these things just kind of form as a cocktail in our brain and then
Yeah,
comes out. But I'm just curious if there's anyone specific that you know of that you could point to that's had a major impact on, the
you
kind of
know,
artist that you are.
I I wish I had a better answer to that question. I don't ever ask that question. I don't know. I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for music that has a lot of piano in it. So a lot of the bands that were super popular in the early aughts or 90s, there's a lot of so piano definitely. I gravitate towards that, but you mentioned the EP having more of like a theatrical sound to it.
Mhm.
That wasn't intentional. Like I would write songs and I would show them to people, and they're like, "Oh, it sounds like musical theater." I'm like, "What?" And I was kind of offended by that. And then I realized, like, well, actually, maybe there's something to that. It's not even that I
Mm,
necessarily try to sound like that. It's kind of my bent. So,
yeah.
um, so yeah,
Would you say
that's a very
what would you say you were
convoluted answer.
what would you say you were trying to do?
Oh
Were
no,
you were you
I
were you
lost
at s
audio
Did
for
you lose
you
audio
again.
again? No, I can still hear you. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Nothing? No? No? I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on today. This is super crazy. It's not usually like this. Um, but let me give you a couple seconds here. We'll see if anything comes back. Anything? Anything? No? Check. Check. 1, 2. Check. 1, 2.
Anything?
Can you hear me now?
No,
Anything? No.
well, can you hear me?
I can hear you,
Check.
yeah.
Check. 1, 2. Check. 1, 2.
I'm
Can you hear me
listening to
now?
you
Anything?
on
No.
Facebook
Well,
Live.
can you hear me? I
Oh,
can hear
okay.
you.
That's
Yeah.
why
Check. One,
it's
two.
coming
Check.
through. That's
One,
really
two.
weird. You should probably you should probably
Listening
turn that off.
to you on Facebook Live. Can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Because
That's
it's
fine.
like
One,
people are going to hear it twice. It's going to be super, super annoying. All right. Well, that's too bad. I was going to ask one more good question here, but we'll go ahead and we'll wrap this up. Everybody, I appreciate you guys for taking the time to check out this episode with Jon. I do apologize for any technical difficulties that happened along the way. We'll get it cleaned up, and hopefully the podcast version sounds really, really good for you guys. But I appreciate y'all. Have an awesome rest of your day, and I look forward to being back with you Monday for the next episode. Take care, guys.